Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do the second part to the Halloween themed guitar strap. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so we've got the last episode we did our artwork transfer. Now we're going to go ahead and this leather has been cased, and we're going to go ahead and do our decorative stamping. And I'm going to start right about the center. This is approximately 22 inches, so start approximately in the center, and I'm using two different decorative stamps here. And they're kind of similar, and I'll show them to you here in just a second, but I'm going to go every other one, so I'll alternate them. They're similar, but they're a little bit different in size and style, but I want to make sure that I don't get them mixed up as I go down. And I'm using, on the last episode we did the grooving around, so that gives me a line in the leather to follow as I do my stamping. Now I do have a piece of granite here, and I've mentioned this before, but I got this at a local countertop place that makes granite countertops, and they have all these cutouts for bathroom sinks or kitchen sinks, or so if you just go in and ask them, they'll probably either sell it to you super cheap, or in this case I went in and offered to buy one, and they just gave it to me. They told me to pick out whatever I wanted. So if you just go in and ask, I told them I was using it for leather work, and they were very nice and told me just to go out back and get whatever I wanted out of the scrap bin. So just go down to your local granite countertop place and ask them. Tell them, hey, I'm getting involved in some leather work at my home or whatever, and I'd like to purchase a small piece of granite, or if you have some scraps, that'd be great. They'll probably just let you have it. So you can see, I'll show you the decorative stamping that I'm doing here around the outside edges of the strap, and how that's going to help offset the artwork instead of the artwork just being out there in no man's land on this strap. So it'll border it, give it a little bit of interest. I'll continue to go around. It'll take a little while to complete this all the way around, so I'm going to go ahead and finish the stamping, and then I'll be back. Alright, so I got all of the stamping done all the way around. So it helps set off the artwork a little bit. And then the next thing I'm ready to do is take my carving knife, my swivel knife, and go ahead and finish my artwork by doing some carving around where I drew it onto my leather, or actually transferred it to my leather. So I'll start with these lines over here on this side. And I always like to, when I'm carving, I like to pull my knife, my swivel knife toward me. And that swivel knife blade is beveled. So it does open that up as you cut on those lines, and it kind of spreads that apart so you can get your stamping tools in there. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. The stamping tools will give it some depth, and that's what makes it stand out. Now don't be afraid if you feel like your swivel knife blade is starting to get a little draggy or a little dull. Don't be afraid to stop and strop it again. And all I'm doing is following all those lines that I transferred in there off of the artwork. And this swivel knife is really good for doing curved lines, circles, because it'll swivel 360 degrees right in your hand. So I'll continue around all of these indented lines that I transferred from the artwork on each one of these pieces of art that's on here, each character. This one's a little narrower than the other ones, but I'll go ahead, even though it's narrower, it still has two lines. And then I'll finish around the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. And that's the first character done. And you can see, even just with the carving, this one's done, these are not. So even just with the carving, I haven't done any stamping to it yet to give it any depth. It's already taken some depth, or brought out some depth in there. And then what I'll do is I'll take, I like using a smooth beveling stamp. And that's what a smooth beveling stamp looks like. I also have one that has a little texture to it, but I kind of prefer the smooth one. Set my swivel knife over, and then all I'll do is take the beveled point and I'm going to tap that beveled point of that stamping tool down in that cut. Now I'm not trying to go super hard and widen it way out. I just want to use that tool to bevel those edges and give that cut line that I did with my swivel knife even more depth. Gives it more of a 3D effect. So you notice I'm just tapping. I'm not hitting it really hard. I want to make sure I stay right in that groove of that cut. So when you start getting into this small intricate detail, you really have to slow down, pay attention to what you're doing, be careful. And then these areas that get tapped down solid, sometimes you don't have a tool, a stamping tool that's small enough. For instance, some of these areas are not super small, but I do not have a small enough stamping tool, backgrounding tool to do that. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to improvise a little bit and use a stylus or a different type of tool to get in there and shade those or flatten those solid areas out. And I'll show you the before and after. And I'm sure guys that have done this a lot are a lot faster at it than I am. And I'm sure the more I do it, the quicker I'll get at it. So any practice that you can get at doing this, I'm sure it'll help. I feel a little more in control doing it now than I did when I first started doing it. And again, you're giving it, by using this beveling tool, you're giving it more depth. And you just want to take your time. And again, you're tapping, you're not hitting super hard. You can tell I'm just using real short quick taps. And then here's what it looks like with the beveling done, but no shading. And this is what I'm working on. So you can tell the difference between the other artwork that hasn't even been carved yet and this one. So let me throw a little bit of shading in there. And let me see. This shader is small enough. And this is the shader that I'm using. So it's not super big, but you have to be careful because like anything else when you're dealing with this, once you've used that and you've tapped on that leather, you've tapped that down, it's done. You're not gonna bring it back to the way it was. It's changed forever. And I'll show you what I'm doing right now as soon as I complete a little bit of this. And you have to be really vigilant on what you're doing because you're moving that shader as you're tapping it, so you don't want it to come up off of your leather very far at all, just enough to move it, because if you let it bounce, then it has a real good chance of bouncing out of your beveled areas or your cut areas. And you don't want that to happen for sure. Looks like this is going to be about the right size, so I got lucky. I actually had a tool the size I needed to do that. And then here it is after it's shaded. So you can see where it went in and basically flattened out all those solid areas, or those areas that are supposed to appear to be solid. And then you can go in like the eyebrows or whatever, and you can just angle your tool a little bit just to give it a little bit of depth and not full shading, but just a little bit down the line. So that one's complete. We'll move on to the next one and start doing the carving on it. Alright, so we've got one image carved and stamped. I'll be going ahead and doing the rest of these off camera before we come back and go to the next episode or the next step in the process. So I appreciate you coming along. Come back and see what we're going to do on the next step of this project of the Halloween guitar strap. So like I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.